of you, especially to our guest for today, the main speaker for today, Arti Mahajan. I think so. We have a very distinguished speaker yet again. This is the 21st episode that we are recording. So some audit brings the series of Chief Auditor Series, which Satish and I, brainstormed, and we thought, it fit that we talk to chief auditors, we talk to regulators, we talk to academicians, so that internal audit, we get a flavor of internal audit, one of them. And that will really be used, by students of internal auditing and the internal audit fraternity, including the chief auditors around the world. Because in the past, we have seen so much good is coming out of it. Each chief auditor has something to offer. Each chief auditor has got a special ingredient or essence, which is being added on to the entire rainbow of, a bouquet or whatever it is, So it's really great. So in this series, we again bring Arti Mahajan to you, and I'll formally introduce Arti to all of us.
And Deepjee, the second lady
CAE
in this series.
Yes, second lady CAE. So, which is good. So I think absolutely good. Arti has 15 years of experience, which spans across financial services and oil and gas sectors. She has worked with large multinational operations such as KPMG, Citibank, American Express, Deutsche Bank Global Services, Naira Energy. She currently heads the internal audit function at Tata Motors Finance. As part of her role, she leads the audit function across 3 entities of the group that rolls up into Tata Motors. And she is responsible for building a mature, digitally enabled and competent internal audit function for the group, for the company. Her career graph has steered towards multiple business practices, including internal audit, ERM, enterprise risk management, operations risk advisory, financial risk assurance, anti-corruption management, ethics, fraud investigation, risk assessments, control reviews, regulatory compliance. And prior to this role, she was the ERM head with Naira Energy, helping them set up their risk management practices spanning across their retail and international businesses. Associate member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India with a passion for travel, music, and interiors.
Oh.
Over to you, Arti. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Deepjee. Thank you so much. Good afternoon to both of you. Satish, good to see you. Like I said, we've met on several forums. I've grown up hearing you speak and learned a lot from you. So it's good to be, here on the panel with you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Deepjee, once again for that detailed introduction. Makes me feel happy about myself. I like what you said. So, so I thought for this session, Deepjee, Deepjee and Satish, I will share a few thoughts on my journey of last 8 years as an internal auditor. It's so what is it that I have imbibed, and what is it I feel is very important as a chief internal auditor and as part of an internal audit department to keep an eye on, as we plan, as we execute, as we report, as we evolve as an organization. As an internal audit organization. So before that, a quick round of intro about myself and a bit about my company. I will move to the presentation, if I may, please. Yeah.
Yeah, please. You're the host. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Okay, so I think Deepjee, you've actually introduced me pretty much in detail, but the small bit that I would like to add is that my internal audit journey really started in 2014. When I joined the RUI as part of their downstream oil refining company. And I've loved every bit of the last 8.5 years that I've spent as part of this function, because, this is one function which lets you put your hands and legs into every part of the organization. So your audit universe can stretch into anything. I mean, it can range from ethics to governance to operations to finance to whatever part of the organization is critical. You get to sort of, experience it, delve deep into it, understand it well, and then give your outlook and thoughts on it. So I think, for somebody who has a hunger to learn, it's a great department to be part of. And I've thoroughly enjoyed my journey, doing internal audit and risk with Naira to start with, and now with the TMFL. Sharing a bit about TMFL, where I currently work. We're actually an upper scale NBFC. We're a captive NBFC of the Tata Motors. We do Basically, we finance their commercial and private vehicles, and we also do a lot of corporate lending to the dealers and suppliers of TML. As we stand, we have about 260 branches across the country, equally spread across all geographies, some very difficult ones as well. We have an AUM book size of about 45,000 crores, about 6 lakh odd live customers, and we disperse upward of about 15,000 crores annually. So it's fairly a large sized NBFC, so to say. So moving to the internal audit agenda and what I would like to share. So what you see on my screen right now is a typical internal audit maturity model.
Your screen is not up, Arti.
Sorry, my apologies. My apologies. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what you see on my screen right now is a typical internal audit maturity model. I mean, there are a lot of models that you can benchmark yourself against, but the one that I've been typically using is this 5P model. So what I do is that whenever I take over a new internal audit function or at the start of every year, I like to benchmark against these 5Ps to really understand where is it that we stand. So, you start with the purpose that you have a clear strategy in place. You know what is your road ahead for the year. How are you positioned in the organization? Are you consulted during transformation projects? How well are you positioned with the first and second line of defense? Do you have a seat at the table? How well are you equipped with respect to your people? So when we talk about people, it's not just your internal resourcing, it's also the externally, whatever organizations you are going to outsource your audits, they should also be, equally equipped to help you, because what happens is traditionally sometimes we have a habit of just keeping status quo and going back to the same organization. They may not be able to do all the audits well. So it's very important to understand who are the good players for what you need in the market. So, and another thing, in fact, I keep saying is that, today, the need for the so-called purple people is very high, who have a bit of understanding about IT as well as business and IA. So it's very important. So that's another thing that you need to benchmark and keep your eyes on. Process and technology, of course, I think we also need to sort of embrace the technology disruption and sort of keep evolving ourselves and have benchmarks for ourselves with respect to automation and analytics. And Deepjee, here you will agree with me, because I think with Sama, we've spent a lot of time on, sort of imbibing analytics into, Jairam used to spend, I think, greater part of a quarter sitting with us, and we used to give him large targets on analytics, which he always struggled with. So it's always important to embrace technology more and more. And lastly, performance. I always feel that, your reports have to talk to the auditees, right? They should be value matrices based. They should all, because it's more pictorial and more number driven. The more value it's going to add to the business, it's going to be easier for them to understand, appreciate, and sort of accept it. So what I do is, I do this 5-pronged sort of benchmarking at the start of the year. And then we set a roadmap for ourselves. So I think the other key thing to do is you always need to have a roadmap. You should identify those critical 5-10 activities that you're going to do for the year, put them into different quarters, prioritize them basis criticality and implementation effort. And then you mark yourself red, green, amber on where you're reaching. This is always part of my reporting to the board. So whenever I report to the audit committee, I don't always stop at observations and issues. I always have an internal audit roadmap, which I take to them to give them some comfort on what is it that we are doing better and better as a function, every quarter. Then another thing that I would like to say is that organizationally, while every organization will have its own set of sort of nuances, very important to have a strategy PMO analytics office. This has to be on somebody's KPI within your department. So you may functionally they may share functional responsibility along with this department, but it should be on somebody's KPI to help you think and take your department to the next level. There should be somebody constantly thinking on how to do the audits better, how to scope them better, how to, do your analytics, more and more analytics. So, how to do more and more of risk convergence. It could be anything, how to upskill your team more and more. So, but there should be somebody spending substantial amount of time with you as part of their KPI to take your function to the next level. So, so that's another thought which I've always implemented with the IA functions that I've managed. Moving on, I thought I'll share some of the key thoughts that sort of I have always used to ensure that we function as a successful internal audit department. First and foremost, I think when you start, very important to keep an eye on company strategy to stay relevant. You know, till you don't know what's important for the organization, your plan is never going to be aligned, to the needs of the organization. It will never have whatever is critical for the organization. So very important to understand company strategy. You know, something like customer servicing may not be a very high risk or a high focus area for you, but if it's an organization, it's a focus area for me, then it better sit on your plan, right? And it better be an important part of your planning strategy for the year. Again, very important for us to understand the risks and the appetite for these risks, right? Because, every organization, and nobody can run business without risks, right? So every organization is going to take some level of risk when they're running the business. Some bit of it they should be okay with. And it's important for us to understand what are the risks they're okay with before we decide what observation is critical for an organization. Because if they have the appetite for that risk, if they have documented it, if they've taken cognizance of it, then I don't think we have any business of insisting that it is, unless of course we have a different view on it, then it's a different story altogether, right? But it's very important to understand the risk appetite of an organization, right? Thirdly, very important to have a detailed, well laid out risk rating matrix, and it should have the buy-in of the management. I see a lot of confrontations happening at the time of rating observations, and they largely come out of the fact that a lot of organizations have not spent a lot of time building their risk rating matrices. They sometimes have financial parameters, or at the most maybe financial and operational parameters, right? But if you detail them further, make them very granular and take the buy-in of the management, then to that extent your confrontations are reduced, right? Because it's all in black and white. And when you're building this, you should also, I always say, you should always leverage whatever exists in the organization, with respect to second line of defense. So if a compliance function, for example, has, so let's say it has rated a particular non-compliance of a regulatory requirement at a severe or a major or a high, take it, build it into your risk rating matrix. Don't, unless of course you have a different view and you want to argue it out, it's different, right? But of course, but otherwise, sort of imbibe into your rating matrix what exists and what has been built, so that you should talk the same language across second and third line of defense with respect to understanding and rating of risks. Then moving ahead, I think this is another part where we spend a lot of time, as part of the IAD sort of KPIs, is efficient risk convergence. There's a lot of work that first and second line of defense does. We've got very robust IFC units in our organizations. We've got very well equipped compliance units, enterprise risk management units. It's very important to understand what they are doing and leverage their work, because I think audit fatigue is something that auditees across organizations suffer from. And it's very important to keep that in check and keep an eye over it, and don't keep auditing the same thing over and over and over again. So I think risk convergence is very critical, which we should spend a fair amount of time before starting any audit to make sure that we leverage on the work of second line of defense. Another thing that I keep telling my team, budget a lot of time for planning. What happens typically is that we jump into an audit and then we are left thinking, okay, oh shit, this is another thing I could have. So I tell them, download data, understand data, spend a lot of time scoping, planning, understanding. It will help you budget your time and energies better. So understand, the areas that you're auditing. Even if it takes 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you will spend the rest of the time executing more efficiently. So always understand what you're going to audit. Don't jump into it and then say, okay, main dekh lungi, because then, the time you spend on asking for data, completing reviews, everything will go haywire. So that, one more thing, which I always tell my team, and I've been trying to train them at TMFL as well, is that concentrate less on issues and more on recommendations. So I think historically, yes, what we've been doing is just pointing out observations and stopping there, but now we need to go to the root cause, and we need to understand and give recommendations for improvement, more pragmatic, more forward looking, so we are not dwelling on what went wrong, but rather adding value to the organization by helping, giving recommendations and fixing it and moving ahead. So I think that's very important, that your recommendations have to be really, really well thought through, and they need to be communicated well. They should be accepted. They should be implementable. So that's very important. Now, QAIP. Again, as I say, I mean, we audit the whole world and we tell them, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this, your processes are not okay, your policies. I think we need to have a QIP for ourselves also as a function, right? So very important. Our processes should be standardized. People in the department should know what their benchmarks are, what they need to meet. It should run across all parts of the audit life cycle, from planning to executing, reporting, monitoring, closing. Everything should be standardized. Your escalation matrices. So I feel your standardization can be never ending. You can even standardize your data requests, the mails that go, your aim. So the more you do, the better it is, right? So, and it should always end with taking feedback from the auditee. So that's very important. So having a good QAIP, then setting up, clear functional and developmental KPIs for self and team, again, is very critical for a good IA function, because I think one, it standardizes measurement of performance across the department and makes it easier for you also to, without biases, evaluate your resources. And at the same time, it gives everybody in the department very clear-cut goals on what they need to achieve. So there's no confusion at the end of the year on what they need to achieve to get somewhere. So I think that's another thing. Formalizing knowledge transfer, again, very, very critical. I think all of us are tired of our auditors telling us that, aapko last year bataya tha, aapko 2 saal pehle bataya tha. So I think very important that every quarter we have a formalized knowledge transfer sessions within the team, where we are training and teaching either. Of course, I mean, we do take a lot of external help to upskill our people, and we do these sessions all the time. But I think internally also we need to teach and train each other more and more. Then, as I said a little earlier, always have a roadmap for development, right? I mean, don't let things just happen sort of on a roll. Be planned ahead of time and know what you need to do in the next couple of quarters, and always keep measuring yourself. So I think these are a few key elements that help you make a successful internal audit department. Moving ahead, I think what I would also, this is just a sample of the KPIs that we use, So what I thought I'll share for today's session is what we at TMFL IAD, what are the few things that we've done sort of, of course, we've done a lot of work, but I thought just to give a little few examples, given the paucity of time. To show our agility and automation efforts. So what we've done is we've automated our own, the annual planning process. Given that we are an NBFC, the regulator has given us some clear guidelines on how do we need to plan. I mean, we need to be highly risk focused when planning. So in order to sort of give them the comfort that we are doing what they expect out of us, we've built this, these models. So as I mentioned a little earlier, we've got some 260 branches across the country. Now, if I were to audit those, first of all, it's very important for me to know what are the problems where, in what pockets, right? Which are my branches or zones which are doing well, where there are no issues, which are the ones which are not. So collection issues, operation issues, sales issues, it could be anything, right? Ethical issues. So we need to understand, put them together, so that I understand and appreciate before I decide what I need to audit. So I'll quickly show you these few little models that we've developed. So we build this little model which basically captures the inherent and control risks within our branches. So if you actually see, if I go to Warangal, what this really shows that, you know, it's a low risk branch for me. And why is it low risk branch? I mean, what is it doing right? Are the NPAs in control? Is my collection efficiency good? Are my operational scores? Are there no frauds happening? So all of this it will tell me. Similarly, if I go into another branch, okay, this is again a low risk one. This one, you know, Vashi, again a low risk branch. Some happen to be a medium risk. So similarly, you know, so this model really equips us very well to understand what is happening at those branches, and if something is high risk, then why is it high risk, and what is it that we need to dwell into. So it helps us plan you know, the review of these 260 branches much better, and we can also then see the movement across, you know, multiple quarters, which branch has moved from a low to a high, and which needs to, you know, which has moved from a sort of a high to a low. So where do we need to concentrate more? Similarly, we've done this similar exercise for all our processes also. So what you see here is another model which we are using across for our processes. Here what we've done is that we've also besides sort of using you know certain quantifiable, I would say, indices in terms of, you know, regulator observations, sort of frauds that may have happened within that system, within that process, customer complaints we may have received. We've also largely leveraged IFC. So what we've done is we've built this model which takes cognizance of the frequency, type, and design of controls to really first understand how well is that process managed. You know, so once we've factored that in and understood the control risk, the inherent risk of the process, we've then built in certain quantitative assessment parameters. So what happens basically with all of these models is that, you know, it gives us an understanding of those particular processes and zones even before we've started auditing those, you know, those particular areas. So a person who walks into a zone knows exactly what's going wrong, you know, whether my collection numbers are not meeting targets, or, you know, my allocations are not happening right, my GNPs have hit the roof, my settlement losses have gone up, my operational indices have gone down, my customer satisfaction scores have gone down. So, you know, they get to know everything. So they know what they need to pin down. Now moving to an execution level, I think the two things that I have insisted on, and I always insist on, is one, whenever you start an audit, build risk and control matrices. Very important for you to understand what are the risks and what are the controls, and as a result, the residual risks within that particular process. So we've extensively built RACMs across most of our key critical processes, both at the zones and at a centralized, you know, process support level. Similarly, another thing that I insist on is that don't use your audit tool for as a data repository, rather use it to audit, because what happens is that historically, you know, we are used to sort of using these tools to store data, but we don't use it to audit, you know. But what I insist on is that if you need to request for data, request through the system. You know, if you need to receive data and responses, receive them through the system, leaves you with logs, gives you the data to control your audits better, you know. So this is something that we've not sort of been able to achieve 100%. We are sort of in the process of customizing our audit tool to get there, but very important to ensure as well for greater efficiency as an auditor. Lastly, dashboards. I'm a big one for data-driven dashboards, you know, which gives a bird's eye view of what's happening across the organization. So, you know, I feel they are more value add than long, you know, storybooks that we may write. Yeah. So to give you a few examples, you know, what we do is that if I go into a sales zone and start auditing zones, right? So we actually make these detailed heat maps with tolerances built in on what will make it a no issue or a medium or a high issue. You know, then we go to the zones and we use these matrices that we have pulled to sort of map those zones to see how many high, medium, low observations are there. We put them into bar graphs, you know. So all of this then, you know, sort of helps to, you know, the management, when they get this in their hand, then they know, you know, and we also know that where am I seeing it thematically helps me understand what are the issues across zones. What do I need to address more? It, you know, gives the management also comfort that, okay, if there is a small pocket of a problem, easy to resolve, but there are big pockets of the same problem, then of course needs more focus. So all of this really helps to add, sort of as a value add proposition. Lastly, what I wanted to share, so, as part of my sort of journey is that I think these are the 3-4 things that we need to sort of work more and more on going forward. I think we need to partner in the digital business transformation. I think, so organizations are all going to be tech-led. The growth across organizations is going to be tech-led. So very important that we contribute in 2 ways. One, we should be part of these business transformation projects. We should, given that we have an understanding of controls and processes, we should partner with them and help them build adequate controls that ensure the right interfaces in data integrity, etc. We should we should we should ensure we are part of these transformation projects. Number 2, I think as an IA function also, like I mentioned a little while ago, we should also embrace the tech disruption, and we should also make sure that we are using automation and analytics more and more as part of our journey. So those are the 2 ways that we need to sort of be partner with the business. Number 2, I think auditing through the systems is becoming very important. We can't anymore audit around the system given the digitization journey of the organizations. We need to understand how controls are built into the systems, how well they align with the policy and processes of the organization, how is security built in, how is data privacy built in, how are the interfaces built in, how are we ensuring integrity of data, how often how well are our masters updated. So everything, right? We need to understand the systems, and we need to know our RACMs have to sort of ensure that we are auditing through these systems, and highlighting wherever there are snags in the systems to fix. Another thing is integrated risk management. So this is another, I think this is very, very critical and important. I think we can't, anymore play that typical role of being a reactive auditor anymore, because I think the board, the organization, everybody is expecting us to be proactive and help with risk identification and mitigation. So very important for us to keep an eye on potential risks and highlight them. I mean, I may not have an observation, but if there is a potential of an observation or something going wrong, I think equally important for me to highlight, as an internal audit department. Lastly, I think we need to shift focus from compliance to value creation, because very important, we can't be a fault finding department. We need to thematically give more and more inputs to the management, to the board, to the audit committee on how processes can be streamlined and sort of made better and better within the organization. And that's where we, will add value and have greater acceptability, as a function. So I think those are really my thoughts, Satish and Deepjee, and I'm happy to take your views on what I've shared, and happy to take any questions if you have.
Superb presentation, Arti. You started off by saying that you have grown, listening to people like us, Deepjee and me. But I just want to tell you that I've decided to spend the rest of my life listening to such brilliant youngsters such as you, who are the future of the profession. And that's why I think one of the reasons why, Deepjee was so keen to have you up here, and it was a very, very good decision. May I request you to please close the presentation, if you don't mind?
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
Just give me a second.
So very, very brilliantly brought out. And my concluding remarks, I'll obviously touch upon the things that have really touched me, and I'm sure would have touched so many youngsters who are ultimately going to get onto this, looking at this video. Arti, I have one very specific question to you.
Sure.
You seem to have taken, a great liking for dashboards and standardization and all of these.
Right.
What were the key factors which has enabled you to get a seat on the table? I assume, because of the way in which you made this presentation, using my own experience, that you do have a say, you do have a seat on the table. So what were the things that really helped you to get there?
Arti, before you reply,
Sure. Yes.
for the first time in any presentation, I am butting in because this was the exact question which I have written down for you. So I'll just add to this question.
Sure.
In your first slide, you talked about purpose, position,
Yes.
process, people, performance.
Yes.
The roadmap, how do you look at the maturity?
Right.
And in that, the purpose and position is more strategic in nature.
Yes.
And process, people, and performance is operational.
Yes.
So I have written down the same question. What are the elements which enable you, or which should enable a chief auditor to get a seat on the table?
Right. Right.
So just Satish has asked the same question which I've written down here in the book, not to ask you.
I think 2-3 things here. I think 2-3 things here. First and foremost, you have to give the management the comfort that you're not the typical traditional auditor who's looking for pins in the haystack, right? So you need to first start off on the right note. You need to make sure that your observations are thematically put and add value to the organization, right? So I tell my team always that when you're putting anything on the report, make sure you can argue it to the end. If you're not convinced about it, then don't put it. It's all right to send a clean report, but once you put something on paper, then I don't think you should back off. Of course, there are those instances where you may not have all the data and details, in which case you may want to retract, but for bulk of the cases, I think very important that you be totally sure of what you are saying, right? Because do your homework very, very well. So I think, that's important. And whenever you sort of present a report, I think 2-3 key thematic things which are important. See, at the end of the day, I feel an internal audit department should also be run like a business, because what are we doing? At the end of the day, our objective is also to help the organization meet its objectives, right? I mean, we also have, maybe not as large, but financial targets, operational targets. We're also wanting the organization to reach its goals, right? So we should also think of ourselves as a business and run our department as a business. So we should talk that language which is relevant for them, right? So for them, if something is important for them, it's important for us. And if something is not important for them, there is no point in arguing over it and getting emotional about your observations and issues. So be thematic, be detailed where it's required, so that you add value. And I think you need to understand what you're auditing very, very well to get that comfort from your auditees, right? Because they will listen to you only when they feel that you know what you're talking about, right? Because if you go to them once without doing your homework well, that's the end of it. Then, you're slaughtered. And for future, it takes you forever to then build your comfort level back with them, your equity back with them. So I think it's very important to, and I keep saying this again and again, very important to do your homework well, to understand what you are recommending, be thematic, understand the business well, empathize with the business, put yourself in their shoes, and understand what risks they need to take, and then work your audits around those. So that's really helped me build a lot of equity, I feel, with the management and with the audit committee.
Sure. Arti, just one question again. First is, as Satish has said, really wonderful to see, he's going to conclude, but really wonderful to see the risk metrics for pre-audit, post-audit, for the processes, the visualization that you use, wonderful. The dashboards that you use. My question is, we talked about efficiency in risk convergence, when we work with other departments. So basically trying to build in alliance with other departments.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
And also the QAIP process, quality assurance process, which is there for the internal department. So can you throw more light on these two, please?
Sure. So risk convergence, Deepjee, what we do is that at every stage in the planning, execution, reporting process, we try and build risk convergence into our processes. So when I start at the time of planning, very important for me to understand what ERM has articulated as top risks for the organization, what operational risk management has identified as key critical risks within the operations of the business. So very important for me to make sure that I've factored in all of those into my, I would say, planning process, right? So if something is critical, as a risk for ERM and ORM, it can't be missing from my audit plan. So it's very important for me to align over there and understand what they have built as output. And then moving to execution, I think, like I mentioned, for our processes, we have drawn a huge amount of I would say, data and details from IFC. So IFC has maps out all the controls across the organization. So we've picked up, okay, for this particular process, are bulk of the process controls automated? Are they preventive in nature? Are they, what is the frequency of these controls? So if a particular process has a high level of automated preventive controls, then I need to audit it less and less, right? Because, as long as my systems are working well, which is something which IFC is anyways checking, right? So why do I need to spend any more time, auditing the same area again and again? So very important to build synergy again with the second line of defense. Similarly, compliance, a lot of self-compliance exercise happens across compliance departments, right? Leverage on that. Why do I need to go back and check again? Similarly, whatever I check as part of my compliance checks, I go and share with them, right? So that they know what I'm doing. I've got a branch checklist. I audit some 18 processes across some 84 subpoints, right? Some sub areas. So what I do is that whatever I'm checking, I've got these set of external auditors across pan India, who go and audit about 80-90 branches physically across the country. So if they're doing those checks, why does my RCO, why does my compliance department need to go back and do self-certifications over there? Let them not do it, right? Because I'm doing it for them. So I think it's very important to have a two-way exchange of data and details, so both of us can leverage from each other's work. And similarly, report sharing, very important. So I share with them. So today, if I go to a particular zone, I see some potential fraud, I'm in touch with the RCU, right? I tell them, okay, this is what needs cognizance. Please go and do a detailed deep dive, right? So you're sharing our output with them. Similarly, they give us their output, so that we can leverage it into our work. So we're very closely aligned with all of these support functions which work as second line of defense.
Really great. Just one more thing which I asked, about the quality assurance.
Yes. So Deepjee, what we've done as part of quality assurance and improvement program is that we've built this detail. I think it has about 12-14 items on the checklist, and it is as granular as saying that I'll give you a few examples to tell you how granular it is. That if my process says that I need to send an audit notice to my auditee 1 week before the start of the audit, did I do that? If I need to share a report, release a report, let's say within 5 days of my audit committee closure, have I done that? If I need to if my data request has not come in 1 week, who do I need to escalate in 5 days? Have I done that? If I don't get it after the first escalation, have I done my second escalation on time? Right? When I'm asking for data requests, have I used standardized formats? Right? So are my reports standardized in terms of identifying process deficiencies, system inefficiencies? Are my work papers uploaded adequately into the system? Because that's typically something where we lose the threads on a lot of times. So are my, because we're a regulated entity, today anybody asks us any questions on reviews, we better have all the data and details of what we've audited. So very important to leave proper trails behind. So it's granular. Have I done my feedback surveys post completion of my audit? So it's very granular, and it takes care of every nuance of planning, executing, reporting, monitoring, closure. How well are my ATRs monitored? Am I sending regular reminders on due dates? If they are not happening, am I reporting? Am I escalating? So everything is covered as part of my QAIP. For me, as an internal audit department, what are the few critical processes I need to perform? Am I performing them, and am I doing it within the timeline set for myself? That's what this does. Yeah.
Great. Really great.
The question that I have now for you, Arti, is that it's you auditing such a huge organization. You said 260 branches, 45,000 crore book size, 15,000 crore lending, and so on. So it's a huge mass that you are auditing.
Yes.
How do you prioritize, say, branches, or which aspect of lending that you will focus on?
Right.
How does all this happen and how do you stitch it up all together?
So, Satish, that's a great question. I would love to answer that. If you actually see, I'll show you a summary here. Do you see that pie chart? So this is what we use. What we do is every quarter we set about, finding out how many high risk, low risk, and medium risk branches do we have across the country. So these our branches are actually clubbed together into 68 zones. And that's the unit we use really to do this little. Sorry, I think my screen.
Yeah, no problem. But you can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, just give me a second, and I will quickly project it, and you can see it. So you can see this on my screen now.
Oh, lovely.
So, so this is what we really use, and this tells me how many medium, high, and low risk zones I have. And then what I do is that within those, so then two things I do. One is that if some area is high risk, of course, it has to be on my radar. So what we do is that we go into that particular zone and we then try and figure, we don't really try, we have all the data and details, what's not going right. Is it that the GNPs have shot up? Or is it that I'm getting a lot of customer complaints, have a lot of frauds happen in that area? So it gives me granularly the data I need to start my audit, right? So if a lot of things are going wrong and it happens to be a very high risk zone, then I would pick up a whole zone for review. But if a lot of things are not going wrong and it's just one little bucket which is not going right, and maybe, my collection efficiency may have gone down, then what I will do is I will pick that little piece on collections and see what is happening. Where am I going wrong with collections, right? What am I not allocating well? Am I not following up well? Are my supervisors not, sort of chasing the CREs too well? Are the CREs not visiting the customers? What's happening, right? So, so that's really how we sort of pick up our zones.
Just a related question. Do you have any thematic audits, means a particular activity across the organization?
Yes, we do that as well. So what we do is, while at the zones, so bulk of my activity, our bread and butter is at the zones, right? So our sales, collections, everything is happening at the zone. But what we also do along with that is that once a year, we try and pick up like a collection process and do it across the country. So we do that as well, right? Yeah. So,
you talked about partner in digital business transformation, but being such a big business, diverse across the country, geographically spread, so many risks. What's your team size? And, you do so much of work, wonderful work. So what's your team size and how much do you outsource? What percentage do you do in-house and what type of work you outsource and what do you do in-house and how does it work?
Yeah. So, we actually don't outsource too much. And we've gotten, so basically RBI has recently brought out a circular and with the deadline of March 22 for us to comply with, which clearly lays down that we can't outsource unless and until I have resource constraints, either in terms of capability or time, right? So I have to be very careful when I outsource. So we outsource very little right now. And when I outsource, we actually try and work it on a different model. When I outsource, we try to get the best in the industry to work for us on those outsourced review and not just give us internal audit reports, but also give us benchmark reports. So, so typically this year, for example, the two audits that I outsourced is one is treasury, and the other was a couple of IT, reviews around network and server security, VAPT, etc. And what we made them do is really give us benchmark reports so that we know where we stand as a function, right? So instead of only concentrating on observations and, so those are areas that we outsource. Besides that, what we outsource, so another activity that I've outsourced is physical reviews, because I realized, when people, so we've got about a 14-member team, Deepjee, to answer your question, plus 3-4 staff members who we hire on contract basis. So we're about 17-18 people in the team, including me. And what we do is we use a couple of firms for these very niche audits. But the one activity that I've completely outsourced is physical reviews, because 260 branches, I can't have my people going to far off places, So this gives me a better hold because, there are those small time sort of firms located geographically in those areas. So they're better equipped to go and come back. So it works as a good low cost model for me. But what we've done is we've given them standardized checklists. We've given them very clear directions in terms of the report that I want, and very clear guidelines on the fact that they go visit and the report comes to us in 2 days, right? So it's not that it sits in their bucket. So, you have to manage them well, and it works very beautifully Yeah.
Great. Really wonderful, Arti. This has been a wonderful session. So much of learnings from it. So,
Thank you
Satish.
so much. That's great to hear. It gives me a lot of reassurance and a lot of affirmation to hear you say that. I mean, like I said, I've grown up learning audit from you and Satish, and so it's good to hear.
So, Arti, this has been a wonderful evening. Lots to learn, so many takeaways. And I'm only going to make a humble attempt to really summarize what you've been talking about. So, first of all, you very beautifully explained about Tata Motors Finance and how big the organization is. And in one of the questions, I also read out some of the numbers that you called out. But what I really liked about your presentation is the way you that in the first few slides, which Deepjee also spoke about, is purpose, position, people, process, and tools. I love that extra word "and tools," which you so rightly put it. We normally focus only on the process, but you also talked about tools and performance. You said audit, IT, and business knowledge. It's like you should. It's like I always give this example, and Deepjee will smile when I say this. In cricket, whether a wicket keeper should be a good batsman and a wicket keeper, or he should be a good wicket keeper, and then if he bats, it's a bonus.
It's all
So
right.
it's a beautiful mix that you brought out. That you should have audit, audit, IT, and the business knowledge.
Yes.
So what is more important? But I think it's a moving scale.
Acceptable, yes.
It's a moving scale.
Yes.
The report should talk to the auditors. I think that quote unquote was something which is very brilliant. It's not that it must be a 45-page report, but by using dashboards, and which I know you're very high on. So the report should actually talk to the auditors. Then you spoke about very brilliantly, your slide number 6, I think that was a lesson. It is a chapter, I can say, on internal auditing. It had every element of what a good internal auditor should do. So you spoke about that, keep an eye on the company strategy. That's very, very critical if you want to succeed. And I'm sure that your seat on the table has been earned by really looking at and keeping an eye on the company strategy. Understand the organization's risk and the appetite to mitigate these risks. It was simply brilliant. The risk rating, that you must have the buy-in. It's not necessary that you just talk about it, but the buy-in aspect is something that I really like. You also spoke about the risk convergence, the first line, second line, and in one of the questions also, you so brilliantly brought out how this has to be done, and how important it truly is to have this kind of focus. Then planning is more important than execution, or equally important. But plan, work according to a plan and plan your work. So I think that was the beautiful part. The QAIP, which you said, having a robust QAIP it's becoming very, very critical. And today with peer reviews and, it's knocking at the door. I think it has already come on us, but yet it has to be very formalized. But this is going to be very important, that how you maintain your work papers, and there's so much around quality, standardization, as you spoke about, functional and development of the KPIs, not only for the team, but also for the self. Very, very critical to make sure that you have a robust internal audit department. Knowledge transfer. I think this itself is a sub chapter in this mega chapter that we are talking about. It's so important that we have this knowledge transfer, and the industry in which your position. I think the knowledge transfer has to happen from all directions. It's not just north, east, west, south, but south, west, northeast, and from all unidirectional, multi-directional, in whichever way you want. Creating roadmaps is the other learning that I got from today, your presentation. You must have spoken about roadmaps at least 3 or 4 times in your presentation, which means that you are giving a lot of importance to this. Your aspect of agility and automation in everything that you do, that is planning, execution, reporting, and you show so easily and nicely shared information about the company, not information which I can take away from, but actual live examples, which really brings a lot of credibility, in what you're doing. You also talked about 4 topics about what we should do in the future. That is partner in digital business transformation, auditing through the system, integrated risk management, and shift focus from compliance to value creation. I think, and one aspect I think I forgot, I don't know, I have written it, but maybe my eyes didn't fall on that particular line, was that don't focus on the issue, but focus on the recommendation. I think this was a real key punchline. 2 lines before I really conclude. You said, run the internal audit shop like a business.
Yeah.
Run an internal audit shop or an internal audit department like a business. That was really the good takeaway for me. Talk the business language. Then you will get acceptability, you will get equity and comfort from the auditing. That is what you said, which really, really touched me a great deal. So I really liked your focus on standardization, feedback processes, quality focus, and knowledge transfer. These were the 4 key takeaways, besides all the other things that I said.
Thank you.
But your slide number 6 was epic. Thank you
so much. Thank you so much, Satish.
Really wonderful, Arti. It was a wonderful presentation. It'll give a lot of learning to everybody in the internal audit profession.
Thank you so much, Deepjee. Thank you so much. Really great to hear. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your kind words. Thank you.
Arti. Thank you.
Enjoyed myself having this session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Have a good evening.
Yeah.
Same to you.